Welcome to the shop. My name is Jay Helland, and with my friends Steve and Todd, we have put together this website to help people that want to learn about woodworking. And today we're going to talk about a petal bowl and petal bowl design and construction. When we talk about a petal bowl, we're looking at putting the top on a bowl itself that looks like and represents the petals of a flower. Now this one has a very sharp edge, and they really are combinations of a bowl, a lamination, and then another neck put on this case, and this one here as a vase. You can also, and the bottom is solid on this. You can also make the bottom a segmented bowl itself using staves, and if you look at the website you will see that those demonstrations on how to do that. On the website there's a PowerPoint PDF file that you can download for those first 12 segments or 12 parts of making segmented bowls. We're going to add obviously this video to the website, and there will be a PowerPoint that I will also put together and place on the website for the petal bowl. Now notice this petal bowl here is curved, and this one here is much sharper, more of a hard edge. Now, I've made about 5 of these petal bowls. No way am I any kind of an expert. This technique was shown to me by my segmented bowl making mentor, Sonny Scherer, who has now passed on. He was of Independence, Missouri. He's shown a lot of people in the greater Kansas City area how to make petal bowls. This is a 16 segmented petal bowl where, again, this one is solid. This is a solid base, maple and mahogany, and then a mahogany neck on it, just a different shape. Now we're not going to really talk about designing the bowls, the shape and so forth. That's something that there's a lot of information on how to do that, and that's not what we're about today. Now a little bit about the tools that we're going to be using. Obviously you're going to need to have a bandsaw. You're going to need to have either a 10, 12 or a larger disc sander to make these. You're going to choose some wood of contrasting colors, light woods, dark woods, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And also you're going to talk about the design of the petal itself. A lot of times my petal bowls may come, the inspiration may be coming from this is a piece of bobinga. So it's a certain diameter, so I'll just make the bowl to fit the stock that I have. And in this case, this is a pretty good bowl, pretty good size diameter. Like any bowl, you're going to work off the circumference. Once you've calculated the diameter, you multiply that times pi, and you determine your circumference. You have to determine, are you going to use, how many segments are you going to place on this bowl. Normally, I put 12 petals or 16 petals. So take and knowing that 360 degrees in a circle, you're going to divide that by the number of segments. So in the case of a 12 petal bowl, you'll need to create a template that has is a 30 degree angle. If you're using one that's going to make 16 segments, then you'll have to have one that's 22.5 degrees. And I'll show you and talk about this in just a minute on how you can make these 2 tools that you're going to use. You'll need a square, you'll need a scribe, something to scribe with, a knife, or you can use a mechanical pencil to lay this out. Layout is very important. This happens to be a 5mm. I find that as I'm getting older, my eyesight isn't what it used to be, and I use a pencil a little more than I use a knife, but either one will work. You're going to then determine the width that this petal is going to be, and how deep is it going to go back into this bowl. Now, your tools are going to determine how this length of the petal itself. Your table saw, you'll need to measure the height, the maximum height of your blade that can protrude out of the table saw above the table. Probably most of you, I have a unisaw. Take my stabilizer off of my blade, and I'm using Usually get about 2 3/4, maybe 2 7/8. If you're using a chop saw, I have a 12-inch chop saw. I can do a little bit deeper cut. But we're going to have to be able to cut through these slabs. Now, what do? Once you've calculated your diameter, your circumference, you're going to need to start thinking about, how do I make my sandwich? We call this lamination a sandwich. In this case, it's bloodwood and 2 pieces of maple on each side. You can also use other woods. This is maple and walnut. This is the leftover cut off of a sandwich where I've used maple, mahogany, and black veneer inside there. Now, a little bit about the overall design and determining what these angles of these cuts are going to be. The smaller the bowl, the smaller the angle. In this case right here, this is just a 6-inch bowl, and so I've got a 30-degree angle cut on my blade for this cut. And what I'm saying when I'm referring to this happens to be 45, but this is the cut that I'm making. So once I've created this sandwich, I square my sandwich, square the board, in typical squaring process that you're going to go through. Then you're going to tilt, if you're using a table saw, you're going to tilt the table saw miter gauge fence to the angle. Now, the smaller the bowl, lesser the angle. So in this case, I would use a 30. If I went to a 6.5, maybe 7, I would definitely go to 35 degrees. It doesn't have to be in increments of 5 degrees. It can be 33 degrees. It can be 38 degrees. But the larger the bowl, you'll want, just for proportion, you'll want this petal to keep expanding. And as you can see, that if I have a bowl, a large bowl, I may want to have a 45 degree cut of the original slab that we're going to make. Now, a lot of this seems, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around some of this when you're just learning, but this is the slab that I'm talking about. These pieces, or this is the sandwich. The slabs are the pieces that are going to come off of there. Now, let me show you what happens here. I'm going to just grab one that's been cut. Here you can see the cuts. So I've laid this down so that this is coming off the table saw, like so. You will put, if you're using a table saw, you're going to put a auxiliary stop on your fence of your table saw, so that when you come back and register against that stop and then you begin the cut, you'll have a space between the blade and the fence. You'll end up having usually use about a 3/4 inch stop in there. Clamp that to the fence, lock your fence down, make these about 3/4 of an inch, these slabs about 3/4 of an inch thick. They can be thicker, 7/8 inch, they can be whatever thickness you want them to be, but you'll need to calculate when you're determining the length of the board. You're going to need to know what that is going to be, plus the blade width for waste. And then you're going to need about 5-6 inches so that you've got something to support this cut on your miter gauge. So I then also I will go ahead and, besides turning on my vacuum, I will go ahead and turn on a little vacuum cleaner, and with the nozzle on there, as that board's come off, I can then reach in there and actually suck it up with my vacuum cleaner and set it off to the side without putting my hand down by an exposed blade. So once you've cut these, the number that you need, and normally when I set this up, I lay it out so that I have enough wood to make 2 petals, because you're going through a lot of work and a lot of effort of gluing things together. Now, anybody that's done any laminating, they know that this stuff is going to, when you put wood together like this, it's going to start sliding on you. So it's not a bad idea to go ahead and register and drill some holes and register those with maybe a 1/4 inch dowel rod on one end, so that at least that one's not getting squirrely and slipping around all over the place on you. And then you can also do one on the other end. I've done it that way, and then slide them together so that it just makes the glue up a little bit easier. I over drill it just a little bit, so that it's not. I don't have to be fighting with that dowel rod when I'm putting this together. Use plenty of glue. Suggest you use original Titebond glue, but you can use the Titebond 2 as well. But I see that I think Titebond, there's a little bit less creep when I make my bowls, my segmented bowls, using tight bond. Now, once you've gone through the process of setting your saw up and you made all your cuts, you're now ready to do some layout work. Now, I'm going to show you, this is a slab. One slab makes one petal. And what you're going to be doing here is you're going to lay this out. So I'm going to turn this around so you can see it. And I've kind of darkened this again with a Sharpie pen. You're going to take and lay a small square on here, and you're going to draw a line up from that corner straight up. The next step is you're going to take a straight edge, and at an angle you're going to take that line with that straight edge, and you're going to draw a line on there like so. You're going to turn your piece over, and you notice on this side I've done the same thing. I've taken and drawn a 90-degree angle straight up, and then, and my good friend Earl Reed, he calls this, and Earl also learned this technique from Sonny too, he calls this grow half of the petal and then go back to the root. So you grow half the petal by drawing that line up and go back to the root. I think that's a nice little phrase to learn and remember. Now at that point, what do? Well, now you're ready to go to the bandsaw, and with the blade and the table 90 degrees to each other, cut outside that line. Stay within 1/16 of an inch of it. Flip the board over, and you're going to cut that out. Then it's a process of going over, and your freehand sanding on your disc sander, take and go down to your line. Now you're going to have a fine pencil line, or you're going to have a knife line there. So take that down to that point. Now once you've got that, you're going to create a rub joint. You're going to glue these together using a rub joint. Now look what we've done. We've taken those two halves and we put those together using a rub joint. Rub it back and forth, hold it, and then at that point let it set it off to the side, hold it for about 15-20 seconds, and then just slide it off to the side and then glue another one together. Okay, then at that point, now this is where your circumference and the width of each one of these segments are going to come into play. On this bowl here, if you've got 12 divided into 360 is going to give you something around an inch and 9/16. So that chord of that, and that's going to be now the width of this segment is going to be about an inch and 9/16. So you've got a center line, so you can measure over half, and then again we're now at the point where we just draw a line straight up. Okay. Next, after we get done doing that function there, and we've determined what that's going to be, I'm going to take just a second here and draw this on here so you can see me do it. And I'm just going to go to the corner on this one for right now for demonstration. If you download this PowerPoint that I create, it will be of benefit to you so that you can kind of take some notes, and I think it'll help clear things up. But there's nothing like trying this and doing this yourself. Now, I've created the width, which will be on the outside arc of my bowl, and now I take and I'm going to use this template. Now this is a template, 30 degrees, inclusive angle. Now how do I get to that? I use, through a method of AutoCAD, I just lay out a segments on a piece of paper, and I then cut one of these out, take some spray adhesive, and I just spray it on a piece of plastic. This happens to be a 1/4 inch plastic. You can see that it's laid on here, sprayed on, and then I stick that segment on there. Before I take this down to the line, I take a compass and I bisect this angle, because I didn't lay out the center of this, and this is very critical. So I bisect the angle by taking and putting the compass point larger than the center, greater than half of the distance of across the this template. I turn it around, do the same thing, and then from the corner, from the point out to where those two lines bisect, those two arcs bisect, is the center of this template. At that point, I take and lay a straight edge across there, hold it very securely. I take my knife and I scribe that. One scribe line across there. And what that'll do for you then is that will penetrate through that paper and give you a little etch there. Etch that on there. Do it only on one side. You do it only on one side. Once that's done, you can then go to your disc sander and you can sand that down to that line and you can check it. The Beal Tool Company, you can buy a adjustable protractor like this one right here, and it'll dial that thing in, and then you can use it to set that angle and check the angle, or you can then just go right to that line and get it very close to the line. At that point, I'm ready now to take, and I've got my segment out. I'm now ready, and I'm going to hold this up so that you can see it. I then put that center line, that template with the line drawn on the bottom of that, or scribed in the bottom. I put it on that center where I've glued those together, and then I just slide it forward or backward until it lines up with the width on this side. And once I get that lined up as perfectly as I can, because you need to be careful with this, and I'll have that now, and I'll scribe a line, scribe a line. At that point, I'm ready to go ahead and go to the bandsaw with the blade again at 90 degrees to the table, and I cut along that line, leaving the line. I go to my disc sander, sand it to the line. You're freehand sanding here. You don't have a jig or anything. You're just freehand sanding. Now, a trick I learned with talking with one of my collaborators, Earl Reed, his trick was that he took this segment, this layout, and glued or taped it down to a piece of glass, a piece of plate glass, or any flat surface. If you've got a piece of Formica cut out from a sink around the house or something, lay that down on there. He then would take, after cutting this out, getting it close, he would go over to his grinder and grind it. And I've started using the same technique. I then get it perfectly to the perfect size that it needs to be. I'll take and put a dab of glue on there. You can put 2 on there if you want to. And then I'll glue that to that piece of paper. Then I take my next segment, and this is one that's already been cut out so you can see what it looks like. I then take and lay it on there and say, oh, is it close to the line? Is it a little bit too small? I messed up. Don't get discouraged, because a little bit you can make up for it with the next one. So I then take and get it as close as I can to the line. I glue it down. Then I come to the next one and I'll make the next piece so that it lines up on the paper template, and I'll glue it down. And I'll just keep working all the way around until I get that so that they all match and they fit on the template. At that point, you can pull them off the template. Take a piece of sandpaper and on a flat surface, again a piece of plate glass, or if you've got a piece of granite, sand off the paper that's been glued onto the bottom side of this. Then take a large hose clamp, and you can glue that up and clamp all that together. When you're done with that, you'll glue that to a face plate, and I'll show you some photographs of that on the PowerPoint. And you can turn the inside, that bottom, make it look nice on the bottom, get it all whatever shape you want. People always reach down. If you've noticed, when you make something, people are sticking their fingers down. They want to see, did the inside get finished? Is it smooth? Is there sharp edges? They're going to run their hands down in there. So I always do something to the bottom on the inside also. I put a contour on the top, and I also do something on the inside. Now, that's the template. That's the basic process that you go through. Now on the neck, once I get this turned down the way I want it, the neck is custom fit to this. It actually has, I'm going to refer to it as a rabbet. It's a tenon, and this sits down inside. It's just a sliding fit. You have to be careful when you're doing that so that locks all that together. It's a lot of fun. It's very unique. I don't know of anybody else that is doing this. I'm sure someone out there in the world is doing it. But I know for those of us in the greater Kansas City area that learned this technique from Sonny Scherer, we credit him with developing this technique. We're very happy to be able to, here at the Hands-On Woodworker, be able to pass on that knowledge that Sonny was so willingly shared with us. Freely received, freely given. We hope that you have fun. Feel free to make comments about this video. I went through this pretty fast. If you're ever in the Kansas City area, let me know in advance. We'll be happy to get together and we can share some of our stories on how making this, share some tricks. I'm not an expert segmented bowl maker by any means. I see what many others do. They're very accomplished craftsmen and artists. Hope to share my ideas with you and things that I've learned. Hope you've enjoyed this. God bless, and be safe in your woodworking. What grit and sandpaper are you using, Earl?
I think this is 320.
Okay. Very good. Looks good. Thank you.
I have this elevated a little
Okay.
on purpose
Okay.
because I feel that I can see and act better that way. Now, the first thing I do is see how close I stand at and what kind of shape it's in. And you can see I got a bulge out there on the end that's going to drive me crazy. See what I mean?
Yeah. Now you're not. Are you wearing the glove for better grip? Okay. Are you going to sand until you get your point right showing on there? Yeah. Yeah. Show me when you think that's satisfactory now. Where do you want to have that? That point comes right down, and it's a little bit. Let me turn that little bit.
It's a hair.
It's just a hair. Now, why do you want that like that?
I'll show you as I go.
Okay.
Now, this one is going to be tight because this is sawed a little too close.
What is your tolerance on getting close to that layout line?
I don't know, 30 seconds.
Oh, really? So you get it a lot closer than I do.
Well, I don't always do that.
I usually get mine about a 16th to an 8th. I really don't care.
Okay. Now then, I'll show you how to finish this off.
Okay.
I turn it over.
Okay.
Because any variance you got here, I'll correct here.
Got it. Just like you do on a joiner or something.
Yeah. Now bring it down to the point.
Okay.
Now then, I've got a little left here.
Yeah.
Now bring it back here.
I'll put those together and let me see what they look like.
I'll have to take a little burr off.
Right, I understand. Now, how many times have you done that? How many bowls do you think you've made? Do you have any idea?
I don't know.
I see several in this display cabinet. You must have 40 or 50 upstairs.
Now I'm not really done yet.
Okay.
I don't do it like that always. That's it.
That's done. That's very beautiful. And you can see all the ones you've got laid out there for your next bowl. next pedal ring.
Right.
That's good. I appreciate you sharing that with us, and we've all learned a little bit a trick here and there.
That's why I do what I do. Now, I'll say I'm right, and I'm wide open anytime somebody's saying, have you tried so-and-so? And either I have or I haven't or I will.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. Those techniques are going to square that board up on the end.
Now, the next thing I do right now.
How long do you let that set before you move anything else? I know you got a lot of bowls going on, but you go ahead and clean off that glue.
Right there.
Yeah, got it.
Probably 10, 15 minutes.
Okay.
Then what I do is set them up like this to dry so that they'll have exposure on both sides.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I see that.
In other words, the air gets to both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Now these are done, and they'll go into my trough, which is back there, and then they'll go up for me to work on the belt sander.
Right. Well, thanks for sharing this information. We'll get this posted on the website so that other people can take advantage of this. And now a lot of these techniques, I know I didn't learn all these techniques from Sonny. These were things that you've developed also, and you're doing it. And everybody should remember that whatever we do, we have to feel right about it.
Yeah.
And what works for one may not work for another.
That's right.
And you need to keep always experimenting and trying
That's
to
the way I feel about
yeah,
it.
try to improve on what you've learned. Well, I appreciate that showing that and welcome us into the shop today. So thank you.
I can wipe its nose. There it is.
In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to take the two halves of the pedal bowl or the pedal used on that pedal bowl or pedal base, and we're going to use a rub joint and glue these together. Now, as a quick review here, this was the slab, and we took a square and we drew a 90-degree angle up. We then took a straight edge, and wherever this point is back here, from that spot there, we just draw a line back. We flipped the piece over and we drew a line up 90 degrees and then back, and we called that growing half the pedal and then back to the root. Growing half the pedal and then back to the root. Now once that's been done, we cut that out on the bandsaw. We took the half of the pedal and take it to the disc grinder, and we grind that to our line. And we've done that in both cases. And since we've gone at an angle here, cutting this at an angle, we've also created a wedge, and that's what creates this effect of a pedal. Now, once you've got that, I use 40 grit on my disc sander. You might want to take a piece of 80 grit. This is entirely up to you. Usually that joint's pretty good. Take that a block of wood that has been squared 90 degrees to this edge, and I go ahead and I put my half of a pedal against that, and I'll just either pull it or back and forth lightly, sometimes pulling it in one direction, counting your strokes, and that'll create a little bit of a finer finish for you. Make sure that you don't have any glue on your plate glass, and we're ready to test that to see that that's a good tight joint, and it is. It's a very good joint. So now we're ready to take our original Titebond glue, and lay a bead along that joint. We want to double spread this joint to make sure we have good coverage. You can see that. Now we begin the rub joint process. And that's forcing that glue out, and you'll start to feel it starting to grab, and when you do, just take and get those in that position. We're going to, so that the position I'm talking, just take and break it loose from the glass and slide it out over the way, clean my glass off, and begin with the next pedal. Okay, our segment for our pedal has been is glue. The glue is dried, and I want to show you the next step. We want to make sure these surfaces are dead smooth and dead flat. So Draw a few reference lines on there. I use a block of wood to hold the sandpaper. And I run that across there a few times until that pencil marks. Talking about is we want to make sure that these two surfaces are slanted slightly, so it makes a peak. So we want to make sure those two surfaces are flush to each other. And then we push them together, applying pressure for about 15 to 30 seconds. Sometimes you'll want to take and just kind of break that adhesion with the plate glass, move it to a new location, and then apply more pressure. It takes a little bit of pressure to take and force that excess of glue out of that depth of the joint. Once that's done, I then in this demonstration, I'm going to attempt to show you how I've determined the exact now width of each one of the segments for making the petals. Earlier I showed you I marked the bottom of the segment of this petal with pencil, sanded it, turned it over and sanded the other top off to get all the glue squeeze out so that I can set my template on there without it rocking. The next thing I did is I've taken the actual template guide, which is a paper guide. I've taped it down to a piece of the glass, and I've taken and bisected one of the segments. And just in case someone isn't familiar with that, you can go ahead and lay, using a compass, just take one of these circles that have been laid out, and anytime you take your compass, set your compass larger than halfway across that, and we're going to bisect this angle. Do the same thing over here, bisect the angle. You draw two arcs, then take a straight edge and line a straight edge up on the center, and then draw a straight line. Now, with that said, I'm ready to take one of the segments and now get it to the exact, or almost the exact size that I want. And I say that because we're going to fit each one of these individually. I've determined that the maximum diameter of bowl that I'm going to be able to make is 6.5 inches. I've got that because I've got a center line where I put my petal together. I've moved this. I can start out here. You can see there's no wood on here, so I have to start moving this in. And at what point do I get where I have that's lined up? I'll line that center up on that side, and I then make a little tick mark with my pencil, determining the exact spot where I'm going to take my square, draw a line straight up. At that point, I take my template. This is 30 degrees inclusive angle, and I've scored that line on there. I line that up on the center line of my petal, and I'll move that around until I get that exactly where it's hitting in these 3 points, there, there, and there. I'll then take a pencil and scribe my lines onto the petal segment. Now you can see it's pie-shaped segment. At that point, I'm ready to go to the bandsaw. With my bandsaw blade setting at 90 degrees, I go ahead and cut outside the line, here and here, get rid of the waste. I then will take and go to the disc sander and sand it to the line, and I'll be very careful to always be double checking to see that I want it to get where it lines up right on this template, so that I can then glue this down. Then I'll put a spot of glue on there, I'll glue this one down, hold it, I'll do the same process. I will first mark all of these, cut them all, rough cut them, leaving just a little bit of the line, leaving the line, so that I've got a little bit of play, a little bit of waste, not talking about just the thickness of that line as my waist. And then I'll start gluing those around and fitting each one of those so that I get a perfect fit. The last step would then be to glue that up with a large band clamp or hose clamp.